So here we are again. This is another impromptu video. So over the weekend I released my game Jari-Matti Racing, and so if you want to check out a very brief tutorial hopefully of that game, I'm going to include one with this particular video. So as you can see, this uses CanDo, and I don't know if you've seen Jari-Matti on my itch.io. I released that. It's a rally game. I released that over the weekend, and Amiga Bill's already reviewed it. So if you want to check out that listing, it's there. But once you've installed CanDo, this is what it kind of looks like. I don't think you need to install most of these. These are just for mainly the demonstrations. Pointers, palettes, brushes, that kind of thing. And I put my own demos thing in the corner as well. So when you run CanDo, it basically looks like this. Comes up with an untitled box at the top, and you have to press the design button to get it to do anything, otherwise you can't get it to do anything. And once you've done that, you can hold down the right mouse button and actually activate things in the menu. So for this one, we're going to take a look at Jari. So I've got this already in my rally directory. In my demonstrations, I've got a Dizzy One thing here. Add document adder, monkey eyes in here, picture fade program, radio test that I don't think I've got anywhere with, button move tests, and a few scripts as well. A few quick scripts that I can just drop into certain programs to get them to do stuff without having to remember how to do it. So those are just my personal things. So once you get the rally game, wherever it is, it should come up with this 1.2b2 source and Basti Player and all the other directories as well. So once you've got this installed, there is the game file and the source file. You don't run the game file because that relies on the CanDo library and that's its own executable. But the source is here. So what we're going to do, it's probably going to ask us where the Jari folder is. So we're going to double click on that, and it's going to say, please insert volume Jari in a drive. So you can do that manually with the CLI. You can just type wherever it is, and of course there's a problem with my keyboard, so CD wherever you put it, DHO games rally, you know, Jari or whatever it is, and you go there, and then once you've done that, you assign Jari, and if you're already in that directory, you can just do that, which basically means assign it here. So we're not going to assign it anywhere at the moment because we're not in the right directory. We've got assign X running, which is a tool, which means that we can simply click on the assign button and it'll assign that to wherever we are. So if we check that out, demos, rally, that's great. So we can now click on assign and it just does it, which is fine. So this is our rally game, and the volume is deliberately quiet on this, hopefully. And so the first thing I'm going to do is switch the music off. So if we click on browse, that will go into browse mode, so we're now using the game itself. And before we do anything, I just want to quit it. And all that will do is switch the music off, so I don't have to talk over the top of that. And so the design function is this bit you can see here, and the browse function is to click on whatever you can see in this bit over here. So it would probably be a good idea somehow to get this screen rolling up and down on the mouse wheel, but I haven't figured out how to do that. But anyway, this is our program, this is what it looks like. And so let's go through it step by step. In case you're wondering, and in case we don't get through this later, we can click on the edit command, click on the button, and it lists out all the buttons. The quit button, in this case, we can assign it a script. And on clicking that quit button, what it does is it goes into the Jari folder, which it should be doing already, so we shouldn't need that. That's kind of a redundant command. And it also sends a command to change the stack, which we don't need either because the stack is already set and you don't really need to change it more than once, so that's a redundant command as well. The char10 just means enter, so we're feeding this into a DOS command, we're saying do that, and then we're pressing enter. And then for this one, we're saying our music player, S for stop, and then DOS file basically is enter, so that feeds it into DOS. So basically it stops the music player. There is an inbuilt one built into this editor, which I should be using, the built-in music editor, but I didn't. And the quit function quits the game if you're running the game, which we are not at the moment, we're running the editor. So anyway, ignoring all that, if you quit out of that, what it's probably going to do, well, it's gone to nothing at the moment. So let's run it again and stop the music. This is our card panels. We can go to the first card, the next card, the previous one, or the end one. And this is a stack of cards that we've got running at the moment. So let's go straight to the first card again, which will run it. And that means we can now stop that music all over again. So what is this program actually doing? Well, I'll talk you through it all, and hopefully it will give you some idea. First of all, once the program loads and once the card's running, the game is running, the first thing it will do is to have a look at the stack of cards. So that's the first thing we're going to do. So you click on the stack of cards, and in this case there's only one card in it, because the jippies command on the joystick port is broken if you use more than one card. Fine. So I'm using one card. That means the entire game has to use just the one card, which is fine as far as I'm concerned. There's a number of options. You can add another card, which I wouldn't recommend, because as soon as you move from a title screen to the game screen, it's going to crash with this particular game. You can delete it, you can make a copy of it, and you can edit it. So let's edit it. The only thing it's doing is it's putting something in after the attachment, after it all loads up. So basically the first thing it does, so let's see what it does, it assigns a variable. Let's start equal 1, and then it resets all of the scores, the local scores, that is, high score, and it does a draw command. So that does a draw routine. So that's all it does, is sets up a few variables and then does draw. So I'll exit from that. We'll check out our routines, which I've moved these boxes around because this is a customized box. Usually they're in alphabetical order, which is completely useless. So I've moved these buttons around on my particular display. So these are the routines. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Let's have a look. 7, 8 actually. 8 routines in total. So what's it doing? It's looking for draw. So if we click on the draw routine, we can add it, edit it, delete it, copy it. If we double click on that, we can see it's a global routine. That means it applies to all of the cards in the deck, of which we've got 1. So it does draw. So the first thing it does is to move object restart, which is a button, moves that off the screen. So X is 250, so it's about here, and it moves it off the screen, so that's minus 30, so it moves it off the screen. And then you've seen this before, it sets up Yari directory, it sets up the stack and starts the music. In this case it's that mod, it plays it, it sets it up as a constant volume of 70, which is the loudest it can go, I think is 64, and constant speed actually of 106, which is, you know, 106%. So it's actually over 100%, so it's playing actually slightly faster than it should do. So, and then that's it. So it plays the music. The high score 1, which is a blank thing, which I haven't loaded yet. I think high score is something different. It's score 1, yeah, print high score. Well, high score 1 is another variable. It then loads it up off wherever we've saved it to disk. In this case it's text high score 1.var, and so it loads that up, and that loads up this one here, that's our highest high score. It will save it to that if we get a new high score. So the first thing it does is it fills that variable with our highest high score that we've got so far. It then clears the window. It then sets draw mode to jam 1 and set pen to 1, which is black. It then fills the entire screen black using the flood fill command, which is one way to do it. Otherwise, you're going to have to load up a picture, and pictures take RAM and pictures take time to load up. So instead, I'm simply filling in with a flood fill all of the background to black. That's one way to do it. And that might, on slow computers, that might even draw and create a fancy effect. So I then show the palette, picks title 1, which is the palette for the title, so it comes on before it does it. Otherwise it will come on the standard 64 palette EHB palette, which is all over the place. So we'll load up the palette first, and then we'll load the picture on top of it so that it is the right palette. And then for some reason I've redundantly shown it again, but I've done it anyway. Show palette, yeah, load up brush and then load up the palette. So I don't know why I've put that there. We can effectively get rid of that. And then we move object start to the right place, we move object quit to the right place and remap. So that's these buttons down here. They should already be in the right place, by the way. If you double click on them, well, I can't in that window, but if you do, they'll be already set to these coordinates anyway. So that's good. It then changes the print font to number 2 font in the fonts directory, checks it out, it makes it a plain font, colour is plain font 2 and 1, whatever that means. It sets the pen to 17, which is red, and then goes into draw mode. It prints the score at that coordinate, sets the pen to black, and it prints the total, which is the total score that we've got so far in the game, which is 0 because we haven't played it. Puts that in. It remains, these are redundant because it's already set to that font, it's already set to that plane. So it now changes the pen back to red again. It's already set to draw mode jam 1, so we don't need to set that. It print text high score, and then it sets pen to black again. Print text high score 1, which we've just loaded off the disk, puts that in the corner, and it lets start equal 1. So the start equal 1, it's important, as you'll find out a bit later on. And then I think that's all it does. So let's just double check that. That's all it does. So it gets to the end, it prints everything out, and then it does start equals 1. Okay then. So what does it do then? Well, it waits for a player to do something about it, and we can do all of that on the game port. The game port handles the mouse, the joystick, and whatever that means. And our freedom can be left, right, up, down, or even in the diagonals as well. We can set a movement to that, so it triggers on a certain movement, I think, and that's set to every movement, I think, 1 times 1. And so I think you can have it every 10th movement on one of these things or whatever. And jiffies, that will be set to 10 if we were playing the game, and that makes sure that it checks the joystick every 10 jiffies, which is like a millisecond. So every 10 milliseconds it'll check it, and that means every second, hopefully, it'll register our joystick inputs nice and quickly. If we set it to 0, it's only going to check it once. Not once a second, not once a minute, it'll check it once. And then once you've done that, it'll wait for the joystick to be reset before it checks it again. So it's on once at the moment. But you can see a script occurs every time we use the controller. In this case, it's a joystick. That script will then execute something depending on whatever you've done. So it starts 1, which it should be. If you pull it left, oh no, hold on a minute, that's arg1. So if the fire button on the controller is pressed, i.e. the left joystick button, of which you can have, I think, at least 2, because you can have a right joystick button as well, and maybe a third. And you can definitely have a left, right, and middle mouse buttons and things like that. But anyway, it looks like if the joystick is pressed, then do object script start on click. So that's triggering whatever the button start does. Do object, i.e. do button start on click. Okay. And it looks like if we're pulling the joystick right, it does whatever the quit button does on clicking it right. So that's that button. And then starts 2, which isn't at the moment. It plays the game. And if it start is 3, which it isn't at the moment, that runs the course editor. And if starts 4, then it basically restarts the game. It does object script restart on click. And I haven't put quit on there because usually if you're messing around playing the game, it's usually on left or right and the game quits out. So you can't quit from the restart page, you have to go back to the main menu. So that's what the restart button does. It simply does draw, which you've seen already, and that's basically the main menu. So that's all the restart button does, it simply does that. Do draw. And as for the editor, that creates a temporary file in memory, a document. It loads up the document course text wherever it is. It pastes all of that information in real time, and then it saves it up. So if you're pulling left, it does one thing, and if you're pulling right, it does another. And every time you pull right, it saves the script up. So now that you're pulling left, it adds to that, so that you can create a nice long script for the course designer. Otherwise, if you're playing the game, it does time. So time sorts out what the clock is. It then does the collision check. It then changes the font to 2, which it should already be. It sets pen to 26, which is yellow. And then if joystick is left and the TY, if the lower down trigger point is equal or more to that, alright, if it's so far down the screen, TY, so if the text is on the bottom of the screen above equals or above to that, in fact, yeah, it's somewhere around here, so if it's above that, it lets TX equals 1, TX equals 1 plus 45, so it moves it across, and it moves TY to plus whatever it is, plus 80, so it moves it back to the top of the screen. So we're making a column of text. If it reaches the bottom, it's simply saying if it reaches the bottom, move it back up to the top again. So if you're pulling left and let's have a look. If it's still less than the bottom of the screen, it prints the time on the screen, and then a colon and time 2, 15 characters away from that. It then puts an L on it because you're pulling left, and it sets pen to 43, puts another colon there, not quite sure, that's some kind of end point. It sets pen to 26 again, which is yellow, and then which sets it up for the next one, so it's automatically yellow, and then it lets TY equals TY plus 9, so it moves down a column, a row by 9 characters, and then it lets select equal 1, which we'll look at in a minute. So if I'm pulling left on the controller, it prints loads of stuff out, i.e. our current time and whether we've pulled left and right, and then it looks at, well, it doesn't do anything, it lets select equal 1, which is very important. And if we're pulling right, again, if it's on the bottom of the screen, it resets it to the top of it again, and if we pull in right, it prints the time out with an R next to it, and then it lowers it to a new line ready for the next one, and then it lets select equals 2, end if. So that's all it's doing. It's printing stuff out and it's making select equal either 1 or 2. That's the entire game code. That's it, the entire check. So every time we pull in it left and right, it does all that. And I think it only does time once and check once. Let's just see. Well, it's obviously going to do that every time. It obviously checks and does time and does check. So alright then. So this is our routine. It's if start equals 2, which that button there, start, and basically all it does is make start equals 2. So we can have a look at that. And it does a few more things than that, obviously. But so start at 0, so you can't use the controller. It moves the remap button, i.e. the reprogram button. It moves it off the screen. Does the variables. It puts a different colour palette over the one that we've got at the moment, so it goes darker. It then stops the music. It runs the quiet version of the start sequence because the loud version wouldn't run, and so it runs that movie, and then it runs with a literal run on there. That's very important because that one doesn't and that one does. By running it, it means we can run it concurrently in real time, which means we can run our game at the same time. So it now runs the movie version 6 of the rally. It then pulls this for 1 second whilst it's setting up and running the thing, because we're running it concurrently. It's going to try and continue unless we pause, and then it does the time, and then from the time it basically goes back to waiting for the controller event. And as we've seen, if we pull left it does one thing, if it does right it does the other thing. So if we start, you can see let start equals 2, which starts up the controller, and then we initiate the movie, and then after a bit of a delay it just does time. So time comes on there twice, once when we start the controller and once I think on its own, although time tends to go up by 2 seconds with every point, so probably putting the time on twice was a bit of a waste of time. So what does the time do? Well, very simply, time 2, time 1. Okay, so time 2 is minutes and time 1 equals seconds. So I'm ignoring that. So if time 1 seconds equals, alright then, so we're adding 1 second as soon as we run the time routine, and it's on 0, hopefully. If time reaches the end, it increases times 2 by 1, so that's a minute. And if it reaches the end of a minute, it increases time 3 by 1, which is an hour. So hopefully we can increase the time. And that's all the time does. But if time is over 12 minutes and 30 seconds, then obviously you've reached the end of the rally, because the film only lasts about that time, or 12:35, or depending on your CPU. And if you make more inputs, that might take longer. But anyway, it assumes that if time is 12 minutes and 30 seconds, the rally's over. So the other thing that the time command does, the time routine, is it ends the rally. So what happens? End equals 1, start equals 0. So you can't use controller anymore. TX1 equals, so it's going down to the bottom of the screen somewhere, sets pen to green, prints finish on the screen somewhere around here, sets pen to green again, so that's a redundant second command because it's already doing it. Prints hits on the screen. It says TX1 there, that's really TX, but I thought I needed more than TX1 at one time, but now I realise I didn't. So they're basically TX. That's type X. That's the X coordinate of whatever we're typing on the screen. So basically it goes down there, it changes to green, it changes to red, it prints misses on the screen, misses, and then it does the scores, and then it gives you a rating based on the score routine. Then if you're less than 35, it restarts, it drags that back onto the screen, and if you click on that, it restarts the game. And if you're over 35, it looks like it moves everything off the screen, all of the buttons, and after 12 seconds, so that you can actually look at the printout, it does the ending sequence, which is a picture of the end of the rally. And then the third thing that the time command does is start is 3. We're running the rally reprog mode, which is this button over here, to reprogram our track. That runs a different version of the time. And if time 2 equals 13, for some reason, I don't know why time 2 should equal 13 in particular, it basically ends the course layout redesign section and prints that on the screen. So that definitely needs to be rewritten. If time 2 equals... I'm gonna have to think about that. But anyway, it's supposed to, once you've finished redesigning everything, it changes start to 3, which in this case, when you're running the time routine, it just simply prints that on the screen, which looks like is in black for some reason, so I'm not probably going to see that. And 17 I think is yellow. But anyway, that's supposed to say course designed recomplete, and then it goes back to draw again, which draws the title screen. So it's supposed to print that out on the screen after a bit of a delay to tell you that the course redesigner has finished. But I don't know why time 2 would equal 13 in particular. Time 2 equals minutes. So after 13 minutes, just like this assumes 12 minutes and 30, after 13 minutes it assumes you've finished redesigning the course. And that's assuming that you keep redesigning it for over 13 minutes to trigger this off in the first place, which is kind of redundant because the course will have already finished by then. So that should mean that is time 2 equals 12 times 1 equals 30. Anyway, the score routine just basically says if you scored over so much you get a good rating. If you don't, you don't. And if it's above the highest score, it saves the variable high score 1 to text high score 1. That's the variable that we loaded up at the start. And when you load up start, it's going to load it up again and move that to the high score. If total, i.e. the score that you've got now, is bigger than the saved high score, it equaled it, so, and then it saves it up. So after it does the time, you might notice it runs a check, and check is the course redesigner mode that I've just been talking about. Basically, if time is 0, so if it's 0 minutes and 12 seconds, if you go into the right, it does a hit, else you miss it. At 23 seconds, if you pull into the left, you hit it, and if you don't, you miss it. 27 seconds, it's left, right, you know. So if you remember the start of the game, it turns right, and then there's 3 lefts there on the second corner, 1, 2, 3, and then after that you need to straighten the car up again. Well, it looks like it does that for it, and then the next one, 55 seconds after that, is a right. And then you have to wait to over a minute before there's another right. So that's the course redesigner code. And that triggers hit or miss. If it hits, all it does is it plays a sound, boom. And it plays it at half volume, 50. Channel 3. So it doesn't interfere with the other channels. It puts it on channel 3. It then sets pen to green. It puts correct on the screen. And it advances the line again by 9. Sets it back to yellow. Let's select equals 0. So it resets whatever select is because it's L1, left for 1, right for 2. So it resets it. Increases our score and increases the hits. If you miss, it does exactly the opposite. It prints a boom out hit. Volume 13 out of 64. So if you want that really loud, you just turn it up. And it prints wrong on the screen in red. Minus is the score. Minus, let minuses equals minuses plus 1. And then at the end of the game, you've seen on the joystick routine, that's what that'll do, because the joystick routine also controls the end of the game. Or is it the time command I'm thinking of? I think it's the time command. It does the end of the game. So that's it. Works out the score, works out the rating, and the misses are here. Print text misses. So that's where it puts that. So you've seen it checks, you've seen it draws the hit, the miss, and the scores. The time, the variables, just sets up a few variables. So the only other thing is the ending, which is triggered as, I think, the joystick command moves all the buttons off the screen. Again, that's redundant, but it does it anyway. Changes the palette before it loads the picture. It loads the picture and then changes the palette. It lets start equals 4, which is the end mode sequence, and also the restart sequence, and after a bit of delay it goes back to the title screen again. So that start equaling 4, 1, 2, 3, 4 on the joystick command is very important, because user inputs are also very important. And so start, whatever start is, tells us whereabouts in the game we are, because we're only running one card. If we're running more than one card, we could say that we're running card 1, but we're not. We're only running card 1. So that's basically a tour of the game. That's all it does. It's very straightforward. We've looked at the joyport. We've looked at, well, we haven't looked at the actual running variables because we haven't started running the game yet. And we've looked at the routines, of which there's only 8. Not too bad. Don't need to worry about that. We haven't added any documents. We've looked at the buttons, of which there's only 4. One of them restarts it, one of them quits it. And then the remap button. Let's have a look at the remap button before we close. When this remaps the thing, what's it doing? It sets up the old variables again. Clears the screen, does the title screen, changes the colour to the dark colour, makes a new document, inserts the document course blank text, which is blank text which just has a semicolon on there and the word track on it. So it starts up a brand new document and puts a blank document header on it. It looks like it's stopping the music. If there's title music on there, let's start equals 3, so it goes into the course redesigner, and then it's running the film of the track. After a bit of a delay, then does time. And because start equals 3, that'll trigger something in time. And it will also trigger something on the joystick controller as well. So start, make sure, whatever start is, does a whole bunch of stuff, depending on what start is. So anyway, that's it. So that's basically my game. That's how I designed it. I don't think there's anything else that I haven't mentioned. We're obviously running in, let's see, its own custom screen, which is it set up? No, it's not, but I can tell you what it is. We selected half bright lit. Did we select half bright? Yeah, we did, because it's PAL. I think it's PAL. So we're either running in that mode or that mode, and I can't remember which one it is. But whatever it said on the start, 256 half bright. half right list. I'm not quite sure which one it is, but whichever one it is, we're in 64 colours. And, well, the footage is only... I'm pretty sure it's that, actually, that we're in. So, But anyway, reprog. No idea why that's suddenly come on the screen. Oh, alright, that's now changed our thing because we've changed it in the thing. So let's get rid of that. And we've changed the custom screen so it's in a different format. So guess what? We were wrong. Let's change the definition back to PAL. Score. Okay, that. No title screen. Okay, that. Which now gets rid of that bar and puts it back into the right. Okay. So that's everything. I've now gone through everything. If you click that, it does something. And lastly, if we look at our install wherever we've put it, in this case we've got it in the games PD my Yari directory. You can see some convert text in there, which means you can read that, how to convert video into ham video files. The source is there. In here, our high score table and a blank one if you want to overwrite your high score with a blank one again and reset the game. Sound effects, pictures, music, movies, Amiga DOS libraries, game code, which is the course blank with the semicolon and track, which is the header. And then we've got an old routine in there, which is the one that I used to use, which is completely wrong, so I don't know why I included that. And then the new one that I'm currently using, which is in the game, is backed up as this one. And this is made with the track course editor, because you can see track on the top of it. And that's nicely tabbed out, like a snake, all the way down the track. So it checks it at every point, if it's this, if it's that. So that's a backup in case you mess up the current track routine using the track editor and you want a reference track. Well, there it is. That's the original back again, so you can fix the game again. And that's the music player. And these are the game docs, obviously precisely what's on the internet. And then that is the runner for the video. And the source code for that is actually included in the package, which is linked in Doug's video, which is linked on the itch.io site under assets. So if you click on Doug's video and get this package, the source is included. You can see it's a tiny file, there isn't much to it. It's a tiny file. Event, input handlers, it's not really doing much, it's bashing the hardware. Read, it's doing tables, graphics base, initiating the copper routine, disabling message ports, locking the directory, it's waiting for the audio so it can sync the audio. It's then running the copper list through itself a number of times. But anyway, you can see it's fairly straightforward. So if you know anything about machine code and disassemble that and run the source that's on the GitHub site, then you should be able to figure that out and even reprogram that so it does whatever you want it to do. But anyway, that's how I made my rally game, basically, and going through it. So hopefully now you understand it, and hopefully that's now the end.